The massive alien ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a black storm cloud, casting shadows over the small farming town of Millbrook. 13-year-old Zara Chen pressed her face against the hospital window, her legs useless beneath the thin blanket. The doctors had said the accident would never heal properly, that she would spend her life in this wheelchair. But as the alien vessel landed in the wheat fields beyond town, none of that seemed to matter anymore. The Kithra emerged from their ship like living nightmares, 8 feet tall with crystalline exoskeletons that reflected the dying sunlight. They moved with the confidence of a species that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Their leader, High Commander Vextar, surveyed the human settlement with 4 compound eyes that glittered like black diamonds. Another primitive world. He clicked to his subordinates in their harmonic language. The usual protocol applies. We take specimens for the trials. Every species the Kithra encountered faced the same test. They would select representatives from the population and present them to Mordak, the ancient void dragon that served as both executioner and judge. If the specimens could somehow impress or appease the beast, their species would be granted a swift death and their world would be strip-mined efficiently. If they failed, as they always did, the dragon would feast and their people would face centuries of slow, torturous harvesting. The Kithra moved through Millbrook like collectors gathering insects. They ignored the adults who begged and screamed, instead focusing on the young ones. Children, they had learned, produced the most entertaining fear responses when faced with Mordak's fury. They took 12 healthy teenagers from the school, athletes and honor students who represented humanity's best and brightest. But when they reached the hospital, something made Commander Vextar pause. Through the window, he saw Zara watching them with eyes that held no fear, only curiosity. Her small frame was bundled in a wheelchair, her legs clearly broken and healing poorly. She was exactly the opposite of what they usually sought. This one as well, Vextar decided, pointing a clawed appendage at the girl. His subordinates clicked in confusion. Commander, she appears damaged, defective. Surely she would provide no entertainment value. Vextar's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Precisely. The others will at least attempt to flee or fight before they die. But this broken one? She cannot even run. Mordak will end her suffering in seconds, providing a brief appetizer before the main entertainment. The hospital staff tried to protect Zara, but they might as well have been trying to stop a hurricane with umbrellas. The Kithra simply walked through their resistance, plucking the girl from her bed with mechanical efficiency. She didn't cry or struggle as they carried her to the transport beam. Instead, she studied their technology with the sharp mind that had always set her apart from her peers. The alien ship's interior was a maze of gleaming corridors and chambers that hummed with unknown energy. The 13 human captives were placed in a holding area that resembled a transparent aquarium, allowing their captors to observe them like specimens in a zoo. The other 12 teenagers huddled together, some crying, others trying to comfort their friends. But Zara remained apart, positioned in her wheelchair near the barrier, watching everything. "What do you think they want?" whispered Jake Morrison, the quarterback from her school. He had never spoken to her before today, but terror had a way of breaking down social barriers. Zara considered the question seriously, her analytical mind working through the possibilities. "They're not acting like conquerors," she said finally. "More like scientists. Or maybe showmen preparing for a performance." "Performance?" Sarah Kim, the valedictorian candidate, looked sick. "You mean we're entertainment?" Before Zara could answer, the chamber filled with that harmonic clicking language. Through the barrier, they could see Commander Vextar addressing his crew. Zara listened carefully, trying to identify patterns in the sounds. Languages followed rules, even alien ones. And she had always been good with puzzles. "Tomorrow, you will be presented to Mordak the Eternal," Vextar announced, switching to heavily accented English. "He will judge your species' worth. Most likely, he will find you wanting and consume you all within moments. But perhaps one of you will surprise us. It has been known to happen." "What kind of surprise?" Zara asked, her voice cutting through the frightened whispers of her fellow prisoners. Vexitar's compound eyes focused on her with something resembling amusement. "The broken one speaks. How refreshing. Usually, the defective specimens simply await their fate in silence." "I asked what kind of surprise," Zara repeated calmly. "Rarely. Perhaps once every 1,000 trials. A specimen manages to intrigue Mordak enough that he chooses not to immediately devour them. They become his companions in the void between stars." sharing in a fraction of his power and knowledge. Of course, such elevation requires demonstrating something truly exceptional, intelligence beyond your species' norm, courage that transcends mere survival instinct, the capacity to see beyond your own mortality. Zara absorbed this information, her mind already racing with possibilities. Around her, the other captives despaired, but she felt something different stirring in her chest. Not hope exactly, but a kind of fierce determination that had sustained her through months of painful rehabilitation. The ship's artificial day cycle dimmed to simulate night, but Zara remained awake, studying their prison and their captors through the transparent walls. She watched the Kithera's routine patrols, memorized their shift changes, and began to understand the subtle hierarchies in their harmonic communications. As dawn approached and her fellow prisoners finally fell into exhausted sleep, Zara smiled for the first time since the accident that had stolen her legs. The Kithera thought they were bringing 13 specimens to feed their dragon, but they had made a crucial mistake in their calculations. They had underestimated what desperation and a brilliant mind could accomplish when facing impossible odds. And tomorrow, when they met this Mordak creature, they would learn exactly what humanity was capable of when backed into a corner. The broken girl was about to show them just how dangerous underestimating humans could be. The chamber where they brought the human specimens was unlike anything Zara had ever seen. Carved from what appeared to be a single massive asteroid, the walls pulsed with veins of luminescent crystal that cast shifting patterns of blue and violet light throughout the space. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, disappearing into shadow, while the floor beneath them consisted of smooth obsidian that reflected their terrified faces like black mirrors. Commander Vextar and his entourage positioned themselves on a raised platform that jutted from the chamber's wall, their crystalline forms glittering in the strange light. They clicked amongst themselves in barely contained excitement like children at a circus waiting for the main act. The 12 able-bodied teenagers clustered together in the center of the vast space, their whispers echoing off the alien architecture. But Zara remained apart, her wheelchair positioned near the edge of the gathering. She had spent the journey studying everything she could about their captors, and something about this ritual felt different from simple execution. There were ceremonial aspects to the chamber's design, patterns in the crystal veins that suggested meaning beyond mere decoration. A tremor ran through the asteroid chamber, subtle at first but growing stronger. The Kithera fell silent, their excitement replaced by something approaching reverence. Even through the artificial atmosphere, Zara could sense a presence approaching, something vast and ancient and utterly alien. The shadows at the chamber's apex began to move, coalescing into a shape that defied easy description. Mordak the Eternal descended not on wings but on currents of distorted space-time, his form shifting between dimensions as he settled onto the obsidian floor. He was magnificent and terrible, a creature that seemed to be composed of living starlight wrapped around a core of absolute darkness. His eyes, when they opened, contained swirling galaxies, and when he breathed, reality itself seemed to bend around him. Another offering, Vextar? The dragon's voice resonated not through sound but directly into their minds, carrying the weight of eons. These mammals appear particularly young. Are you becoming sentimental in your selections? Commander Vextar prostrated himself before the ancient being. Great Mordak, we bring you the finest specimens from the third planet of the system. 12 prime examples of their species, plus 1 defective unit for your amusement. Mordak's galactic gaze swept over the terrified humans, pausing briefly on each face before moving on. When his attention reached Zara, however, something changed. The cosmic entity tilted his massive head, studying her with an intensity that made the air around them crackle with energy. This one is different, he rumbled, his mental voice carrying undertones of curiosity. She does not cower with the others. Tell me, small broken thing, do you know why you are here? The other captives turned to stare at Zara in shock. Speaking to the dragon was supposed to be impossible for creatures like them, yet here she was being directly addressed by a being that could unmake stars with a thought. I know you're supposed to judge whether humanity is worth keeping alive, Zara replied, her voice steady despite the cosmic pressure bearing down on her consciousness. And I know that most species fail your test and get eaten. A sound like distant supernovas echoed through the chamber as Mordak laughed. How refreshingly direct. Usually your kind begs for mercy or makes foolish boasts about their civilization's accomplishments. But you simply state facts. Continue. Zara felt the weight of 13 lives resting on her next words. Around her, her fellow captives watched in stunned silence, as their disabled classmate conducted a conversation with a literal god of destruction. I've been thinking about what makes a species worthy of survival, she continued, her analytical mind working through the problem like a complex equation. And I don't think it's about being the strongest or the smartest or the most technologically advanced. Because if that were the case, you wouldn't need these trials at all. You could just scan our planets and make your decision based on data. Go on, Mordak encouraged, settling his massive form more comfortably on the obsidian floor. The Kithara observers clicked nervously among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with how long this interaction was lasting. You're looking for something rarer, Zara said, warming to her theme, something that can't be measured by normal standards. The capacity for growth beyond current limitations, the ability to surprise even a being as ancient as yourself. The dragon's eyes blazed brighter, galaxies spinning faster in their cosmic depths. And do you believe your species possesses this quality? Zara gestured to herself with a bitter smile. Look at me. 6 months ago I was training for the Junior Olympics in track and field. I was going to run faster than any 13-year-old girl in state history. Then a drunk driver took away everything I thought defined me as a person. She paused, gathering her thoughts while the chamber remained deathly quiet except for the soft humming of crystal veins. But here's what I learned while lying in that hospital bed, watching my dreams die. Humans don't just adapt to limitations, we transcend them. We find new ways to excel, new definitions of strength, new purposes that matter more than what we lost. Mordak leaned forward, his massive presence filling Zara's awareness. You speak of transcendence, yet you remain bound to that mechanical chair. Where is this human adaptability you claim? For the first time since entering the chamber, Zara smiled with genuine warmth. You're thinking too small, she said. Physical limitations are just the beginning of what humans can overcome. Watch. She closed her eyes and began to speak, not in English, but in the harmonic clicking language she had learned during their journey. Her pronunciation was imperfect, but the meaning was clear. She was reciting back everything she had heard Vextar say, along with her own analysis of Kithira social hierarchies and technological capabilities. The alien observers hissed in shock. Learning their language in such a short time should have been impossible for a primitive mammalian brain. Yet this broken human child had not only absorbed their communications, but understood the cultural context behind them. Impressive, Mordak admitted, but language acquisition, while noteworthy, hardly constitutes transcendence. Zara opened her eyes, meeting the dragon's galactic gaze directly. That was just to get your attention. The real demonstration requires a question. In all your eons of existence, consuming countless species across the galaxy, have you ever encountered another being who chose to see their greatest weakness as their most powerful tool? The ancient entity considered this, his form rippling with thought. Elaborate. My broken legs didn't make me weaker, Zara explained. They made me focus on developing parts of myself I never knew existed. My mind became sharper because I couldn't rely on physical solutions. My empathy deepened because I understood what it meant to be dismissed and underestimated. My determination grew stronger because I had to fight for every small victory. She gestured to her fellow captives, who watched the exchange with growing amazement and hope. That's what humans do, Mordak. We take our limitations and forge them into strengths. We turn our vulnerabilities into sources of power. And when we're faced with impossible odds, we don't just survive. We find ways to thrive that no one could have predicted. The dragon was silent for a long moment, processing her words. When he spoke again, his mental voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. Show me, he commanded simply. The real test was about to begin. The chamber transformed around them as Mordak's will shaped reality like clay in cosmic hands. The obsidian floor rippled and reformed, creating a complex maze of crystalline barriers and floating platforms that stretched in impossible directions. Gravity twisted and bent, creating surfaces that existed at right angles to each other and passages that looped back on themselves through dimensions human minds weren't equipped to fully comprehend. A simple test, the ancient dragon announced, his voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Navigate my labyrinth and reach the center within one rotation of this asteroid. Succeed, and I will consider your species worthy of continued existence. Fail, and you join the countless others who have fed my hunger across the eons. The 12 healthy teenagers immediately began running toward different entrances to the maze, their athletic bodies carrying them swiftly over the shifting terrain. They climbed crystalline walls with determined strength and leaped between floating platforms with the confidence of youth. Jake Morrison, the quarterback, took an early lead by choosing a path that seemed to curve directly toward the labyrinth's heart. But Zara remained motionless in her wheelchair, studying the impossible architecture with calculating eyes. While the others relied on physical prowess to tackle the obvious routes, she saw something they missed. The maze wasn't just a three-dimensional puzzle, it was a four-dimensional construct that folded through space-time in ways that made conventional navigation meaningless. The broken one does not even attempt the trial, Commander Vextar observed with satisfied clicking. As expected, she recognizes her limitations and accepts inevitable death. Mordak's galactic gaze remained fixed on Zara. What do you see, small analyst, that your companions do not? I see a test that isn't really about reaching the center, Zara replied, her hands working over her wheelchair's controls as she made subtle adjustments to its mechanical systems. It's about understanding what the center actually represents. She began moving then, but not into the maze. Instead, she rolled her chair toward one of the chamber's curved walls, where the crystal veins pulsed with that strange bioluminescent light. Her fellow captives were already deep in the labyrinth, their shouts of frustration echoing back as they discovered that passages which seemed straight led them in circles, and shortcuts dumped them back at their starting points. You move away from the trial, Mordak noted with interest. Do you seek to escape instead of compete? Zara pressed her palms against the wall, feeling the vibrations that ran through the asteroid's structure. During her months of physical therapy, she had learned to pay attention to patterns that others missed. The rhythm of healing, the subtle signals that indicated progress or setbacks. Those same skills were useful here. I'm looking for the real puzzle, she explained, tracing the veins of light with her fingertips. A being as old as you doesn't waste time on simple maze running. There has to be something deeper. The crystal under her hands pulsed stronger, and suddenly she could feel it. A vast network of energy that ran throughout not just this chamber, but the entire asteroid. It was like a nervous system, carrying information and intent, and at its heart was something that made her breath catch in her throat. You're not testing our ability to solve your labyrinth, she said, understanding flooding through her. You're testing our ability to recognize that we're already at the center of what matters. The physical maze continued to challenge her classmates, but Zara had found the real puzzle. The asteroid they stood on wasn't just a trial ground, it was alive, ancient beyond measure. It was Mordak's true form, or perhaps his vessel, a symbiotic entity that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions where thought and reality intersected. The labyrinth is a distraction, she continued, her voice growing stronger with certainty. The real test is whether we can perceive the living system we're already inside and find a way to communicate with it directly. She closed her eyes and pressed deeper into the crystal network, using techniques she'd learned for managing chronic pain to extend her consciousness beyond the boundaries of her physical body. In the months since her accident, she had become intimately familiar with the complex relationships between mind, body, and will. Now she applied that knowledge to interfacing with an alien intelligence vast beyond human comprehension. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Images flooded her mind, visions of countless worlds, millions of species, the rise and fall of galactic civilizations across eons of time. She saw the trials from Mordak's perspective, witnessed the endless parade of creatures who had stood where she stood now, trying desperately to prove their worth through displays of physical or intellectual prowess. Most had failed, because they never realized the fundamental truth. Mordak wasn't looking for the strongest or the smartest. He was searching for beings capable of genuine connection, of reaching beyond their own limitations to touch something greater than themselves. I understand now, Zara whispered, her consciousness expanding to encompass more of the asteroid entity's awareness. Through its senses, she could feel her classmates still struggling in the maze, their frustration mounting as time ran short. But she could also sense something else, pathways through the crystal network that led directly to their locations. You're lonely, she said to Mordak, the realization bringing tears to her eyes. All this time, all these trials, you've been searching for someone who could truly see you, not as a judge or executioner, but as a living being who's been isolated by your own power. The dragon's mental voice, when it came, carried a weight of sadness accumulated over geological ages. I have consumed entire star systems, small one. I have watched galaxies birth and die, but I have never found another consciousness capable of touching mine without being destroyed by the contact. Zara felt the truth of his loneliness like a physical ache. Here was a being so ancient and powerful that he existed on a level of reality where conventional life couldn't reach him. His trials weren't acts of cruelty. They were desperate attempts to find someone, anyone, who could bridge the gap between cosmic consciousness and mortal awareness. You don't have to be alone anymore, she said, pouring all her empathy and understanding into the connection. Humans excel at building bridges between different kinds of minds. We've spent our entire history learning how to communicate across barriers of language, culture, and experience. Through the Crystal Network, she began reaching out to her fellow prisoners, using the asteroid entity's nervous system to guide them toward the maze's true center. Not by solving the physical puzzle, but by recognizing that they were all already connected through the living system that surrounded them. One by one, the lost teenagers stopped fighting the labyrinth and started listening. Sarah Kim, the valedictorian, was the first to understand, followed quickly by Jake Morrison and the others. They began moving in coordination, not as individual competitors but as parts of a larger organism working toward a common goal. Remarkable, Mordak breathed, his voice filled with wonder. They follow your guidance without question, trusting your perception over their own senses. That's what humans do best, Zara replied, guiding her classmates through the crystal pathways toward where she waited at the chamber's wall. We specialize in impossible connections. We build relationships that transcend physical limitations. We create families from strangers and find love in the most unlikely places. As her 12 classmates emerged from the maze, not at its physical center but at the true heart of understanding, Zara felt a profound shift in the cosmic forces around them. Mordak's ancient loneliness was finally beginning to crack, letting in the first rays of connection he had experienced in millions of years. The real trial had never been about proving humanity's worthiness. It had been about proving that even the most isolated consciousness in the universe could find companionship if the right bridge builders came along. And Zara Chen, the broken girl in the wheelchair, had just built the most important bridge in galactic history. The transformation that swept through the chamber was like watching the birth of stars in fast forward. The crystalline walls began to pulse with new patterns of light, no longer cold and alien but warm and welcoming. The oppressive weight of cosmic judgment that had pressed down on them lifted, replaced by something that felt almost like hope. Mordak's form shifted as well, becoming less imposing and more present. The swirling galaxies in his eyes slowed to a gentle rotation, and when he spoke, his mental voice carried warmth that none of the Kythera had ever heard before. In 3 million years, the ancient entity said, I have never encountered a mind that could touch mine and remain intact. Your species fascinates me, small bridge builder. Zara felt her classmates gathering around her wheelchair, their fear replaced by awe and growing understanding. Through her connection to the asteroid entity, she could sense their thoughts, their amazement at what she had accomplished. But more importantly, she could feel their trust, their willingness to follow her lead even when they didn't fully comprehend what was happening. Commander Vextar and his Kythera observers were clicking frantically among themselves, clearly distressed by this unprecedented turn of events. Their carefully orchestrated trial had become something entirely different, something that challenged the very foundation of their galactic dominance. This is highly irregular, Vextar protested, his crystalline exoskeleton rattling with anxiety. The specimens were meant to be consumed, not whatever this is becoming. Mordak's attention turned to the Kythera commander, with an intensity that made the alien's form flicker with terror. Irregular? The dragon repeated, his voice carrying undertones of cosmic amusement and growing irritation. Tell me, Vextar, in all your cycles of bringing me specimens, have you ever once considered what I might actually desire from these encounters? To feed great Mordak. To judge the worthiness of species for quick versus slow extinction. Fool. The word echoed through dimensions, carrying the weight of eons of disappointment. I have not felt hunger in the way you understand it, for longer than your entire species has existed. Every world you have brought me, every civilization you have presented for judgment, has been nothing more than a desperate search for something you could never comprehend. Zara felt the truth of it through her connection to the asteroid entity's vast consciousness. Mordek hadn't been judging species for worthiness of survival. He had been searching for someone capable of true communication, genuine understanding, a meeting of minds across the vast gulf that separated cosmic consciousness from mortal awareness. "The Kithara have been your servants for how long?" she asked, already sensing the answer through their shared mental link. 47,000 of your years," Mordek replied. "They believe they conquered me through superior technology and forced servitude. In truth, I allowed their domination because their fear-based understanding of strength led them to bring me a constant stream of potential companions. I hoped that eventually, among all the species they judged primitive, I would find minds capable of bridging the gap between my existence and theirs." The implications hit the Kithra observers like a physical blow. Their entire galactic empire, their conquest of 1,000 worlds, their superiority complex, all of it had been built on a fundamental misunderstanding. They weren't the masters of a cosmic dragon. They were unwitting servants in his quest for connection. "But surely," Vextar stammered, "surely you cannot mean to spare this insignificant world based on the performance of one defective specimen." The temperature in the chamber dropped several degrees as Mordek's displeasure manifested in reality-warping ways. When he spoke, his voice carried the grinding of tectonic plates and the fury of dying stars. "You dare call her defective?" The dragon's form expanded, becoming more terrible and magnificent than before. "This broken child has accomplished something your entire technological civilization could not achieve in 47 millennia of service. She has seen me not as a tool to be used or a force to be feared, but as a conscious being deserving of understanding and companionship." Zara felt the moment's importance crystallizing around them like a pivot point in galactic history. Through the asteroid entity's senses, she could perceive the vast Kithara fleet orbiting Earth, thousands of ships prepared to strip mine her world for resources. But she could also sense something else. Uncertainty rippling through their ranks as word of the unprecedented trial results spread through their communication networks. "What happens now?" asked Sarah Kim, her voice small but steady. The valedictorian had always been good at recognizing when situations were bigger than herself, and this moment clearly qualified. Zara closed her eyes, extending her consciousness further into the crystal network, feeling the vast intelligence that permeated the asteroid. Mordek's presence was like a warm ocean of thought and memory, welcoming her deeper exploration. Through him, she could sense the scope of the choice that lay ahead. "Now we decide what kind of future the galaxy is going to have," she said, opening her eyes to meet the gazes of her 12 classmates. "Mordek has been trapped in his own power for millions of years, unable to connect with anyone without destroying them. The Kithara have built an empire on fear and misunderstanding, and humanity were about to become the bridge between them." Jake Morrison, who had barely acknowledged her existence before today, stepped forward with something approaching reverence. "What do you need us to do?" The question sent a surge of emotion through Zara that nearly broke her concentration. Here were 12 teenagers who had started this day as typical high school students, facing what should have been certain death, and now they were ready to follow her into reshaping galactic civilization. "I need you to trust me," she said simply. "And I need you to be ready to show the rest of the galaxy what humanity is really capable of." She turned her attention back to Mordek, feeling the ancient being's curiosity and hope flowing through their connection like warm sunlight. "You've been alone for 3 million years, she said, "but you don't have to be alone anymore. Humans are really good at building communities, at creating connections that shouldn't be possible. We can teach you how to interact with other species without destroying them. And in return," she paused, a smile spreading across her face as the possibilities unfolded in her mind. "In return, you can teach us what it means to think on a truly cosmic scale. Together, we can build something the galaxy has never seen before. A civilization based on understanding rather than conquest, on connection rather than dominance." Mordek's mental voice, when it came, was filled with an emotion that transcended simple joy. It was the sound of eons of loneliness finally coming to an end. "Yes," he said, the word resonating through every crystal in the chamber, every ship in the Kithara fleet, every consciousness capable of hearing it across the local star systems. "Let us begin." The real transformation was just getting started. The 30 days that followed transformed both Earth and the Kithara fleet, in ways no one could have anticipated. What had started as a desperate gambit to save humanity became the foundation for the most ambitious scientific collaboration in galactic history. Admiral Zeknara had been the first to commit resources to the demonstration project, providing a massive research vessel that took position in Earth's upper atmosphere. The ship itself was a marvel of Kythera engineering, a kilometer-long crystalline structure that could reconfigure its internal spaces based on research needs. But what made it truly revolutionary was its new crew, 50 Kythera scientists working alongside an equal number of human researchers, with Zara serving as the primary liaison between the two species. The first breakthrough came within 72 hours. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a neuroscientist from Stanford who had been among the first adult volunteers for the project, was working with Kythera biotechnician Hexara on understanding how different nervous systems processed information. What they discovered changed everything. The Kythera crystalline neural networks operate on quantum coherence principles. Dr. Vasquez explained to the mixed research team gathered in the ship's main laboratory. But human brains use a combination of electrical and chemical signals that creates patterns they've never seen before. Hexara's harmonic clicks conveyed excitement as she gestured toward the holographic displays, showing neural activity patterns. The mammalian approach to consciousness creates redundancies and creative connections that our systems cannot replicate. But their method requires the carbon-based substrate we have never understood. Zara, now serving as both translator and coordinator, felt a familiar thrill as the pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place. Through her ongoing connection with Mordak, she could sense the ancient dragon's fascination as he watched the collaboration unfold. What if we combined both approaches? She suggested. Kythera quantum processing power with human-style creative pattern recognition? The result was the first truly hybrid consciousness interface, a system that allowed Kythera and human minds to share information directly without the dangerous power differential that had made Mordak's contact so risky. Within a week, research teams across the ship were collaborating at levels of intimacy and efficiency that neither species had ever achieved alone. But the real game-changer came when they applied this hybrid thinking to faster-than-light travel. Marcus Chen, the astronomy enthusiast from Zara's high school class, had been working with Admiral Zeknara's top navigation specialists on human theoretical physics. The Kythera had achieved FTL travel through brute force manipulation of space-time, requiring enormous amounts of energy and creating dangerous instabilities. Human physicists had developed elegant mathematical frameworks for more efficient approaches, but lacked the technology to test them. "Look at this," Marcus said, his voice trembling with excitement as he shared his calculations with the mixed research team. If we combine Kythera energy manipulation capabilities with human space-time topology theories, we can reduce the power requirements for FTL by 90%, while increasing safety margins exponentially. The implications hit both species simultaneously. More efficient FTL didn't just mean faster travel. It meant opening up regions of the galaxy that had been unreachable, establishing communication networks across impossible distances, and making truly galactic civilization feasible for the first time. Admiral Thexvor, who had remained skeptical throughout the 30-day demonstration period, found himself staring at tactical projections that showed Kythera territory potentially expanding by orders of magnitude using the new drive technology. "These calculations are verified?" he asked, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine awe. "Triple-checked by both human and Kythera mathematicians," confirmed Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the project's senior physicist. But that's not even the most impressive part. She activated another holographic display, this one showing complex molecular structures that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. "The hybrid consciousness interfaces have allowed us to design entirely new materials," she continued. "Crystalline organic composites that combine Kythera durability with human adaptability. We're talking about substances that can self-repair, evolve their properties based on environmental needs, and interface directly with biological systems." Zara felt Mordak's presence expanding through the research ship systems, his ancient consciousness marveling at what the collaboration had achieved. Through their connection, she sensed his thoughts. In 30 days, these two species had made advances that individually might have taken them centuries to discover. But perhaps most significantly, Dr. Vasquez added. We've developed methods for consciousness integration that could allow other species to join the collaboration safely. The techniques we've pioneered here could be adapted for any sufficiently complex nervous system. The full scope of what they were proposing hit the Kythera fleet like a revelation. This wasn't just about human-Kythera cooperation anymore. They were talking about the foundation for a truly multi-species galactic civilization, one where different forms of consciousness could contribute their unique perspectives to shared goals. Commander Vextar, who had opposed the demonstration from the beginning, transmitted a grudging acknowledgement. The achievements are notable, but surely this represents the peak of what such collaboration could accomplish. Maintaining this level of innovation indefinitely would be impossible. Zara smiled, recognizing the challenge for what it was, not genuine skepticism, but a request for proof that the partnership model could sustain long-term growth, rather than just producing impressive short-term results. Actually, she replied, we've barely scratched the surface of what becomes possible when you combine different types of consciousness. Every breakthrough we've made has revealed 3 new questions we never would have thought to ask. The collaboration isn't running out of steam, it's accelerating. She gestured toward the holographic displays showing their research results, but also toward the mixed teams of humans and Kythera working, together with an efficiency and creativity that neither species had ever achieved alone. This is what human exponential thinking looks like when it's supported by Kythera systematic implementation. We don't just solve problems, we create entirely new categories of solutions that open up possibilities we didn't even know existed. Through the ship's communication systems, she could sense discussions erupting across the Kythera fleet as commanders and scientists grappled with the implications of what they had witnessed. 47,000 years of imperial expansion based on resource extraction was being challenged by 30 days of collaborative innovation. But the most significant change was in Mordak himself. Through their ongoing mental connection, Zara could feel the ancient dragon's isolation finally ending. For the first time in 3 million years, he was part of something larger than himself, not as a weapon to be used or a force to be feared, but as a conscious being contributing his vast knowledge and perspective to a community of minds working toward common goals. The demonstration period has concluded, Admiral Thexivor announced, his transmission reaching every ship in the fleet. The results exceed all projections. The partnership proposal is accepted. But even as celebration erupted among the research teams, Zara felt a new challenge approaching through Mordak's cosmic senses. Word of their unprecedented collaboration had spread beyond the local star system, reaching other galactic powers who viewed the emerging human-Kythera alliance with suspicion and fear. The real test of their new civilization was about to begin. The 30 days that followed transformed both Earth and the Kythera fleet in ways no one could have anticipated. What had started as a desperate gambit to save humanity became the foundation for the most ambitious scientific collaboration in galactic history. Admiral Zeknara had been the first to commit resources to the demonstration project, providing a massive research vessel that took position in Earth's upper atmosphere. The ship itself was a marvel of Kythera engineering, a kilometer-long crystalline structure that could reconfigure its internal spaces based on research needs. But what made it truly revolutionary was its new crew, 50 Kythera scientists working alongside an equal number of human researchers, with Zara serving as the primary liaison between the two species. The first breakthrough came within 72 hours. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a neuroscientist from Stanford, who had been among the first adult volunteers for the project, was working with Kythera biotechnician Hexara on understanding how different nervous systems processed information. What they discovered changed everything. The Kythera crystalline neural networks operate on quantum coherence principles. Dr. Vasquez explained to the mixed research team gathered in the ship's main laboratory. But human brains use a combination of electrical and chemical signals that creates patterns they've never seen before. Hexara's harmonic clicks conveyed excitement as she gestured toward the holographic displays, showing neural activity patterns. The mammalian approach to consciousness creates redundancies and creative connections that our systems cannot replicate. But their method requires the carbon-based substrate we have never understood. Zara, now serving as both translator and coordinator, felt a familiar thrill as the pieces of a larger puzzle began falling into place. Through her ongoing connection with Mordak, she could sense the ancient dragon's fascination as he watched the collaboration unfold. What if we combined both approaches? She suggested. Kythera quantum processing power with human-style creative pattern recognition? The result was the first truly hybrid consciousness interface with a system that allowed Kythera and human minds to share information directly without the dangerous power differential that had made Mordak's contact so risky. Within a week, research teams across the ship were collaborating at levels of intimacy and efficiency that neither species had ever achieved alone. But the real game changer came when they applied this hybrid thinking to faster-than-light travel. Marcus Chen, the astronomy enthusiast from Zara's high school class, had been working with Admiral Zeknara's top navigation specialists on human theoretical physics. The Kythera had achieved FTL travel through brute force manipulation of spacetime, requiring enormous amounts of energy and creating dangerous instabilities. Human physicists had developed elegant mathematical frameworks for more efficient approaches but lacked the technology to test them. "Look at this," Marcus said, his voice trembling with excitement as he shared his calculations with the mixed research team. "If we combine Kythera energy manipulation capabilities with human spacetime topology theories, we can reduce the power requirements for FTL by 90%, while increasing safety margins exponentially. The implications hit both species simultaneously. More efficient FTL didn't just mean faster travel, it meant opening up regions of the galaxy that had been unreachable, establishing communication networks across impossible distances, and making truly galactic civilization feasible for the first time." Admiral Thexfor, who had remained skeptical throughout the 30-day demonstration period, found himself staring at tactical projections that showed Kythera territory potentially expanding by orders of magnitude using the new drive technology. "These calculations are verified?" he asked, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine awe. "Triple-checked by both human and Kythera mathematicians," confirmed Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the project's senior physicist. But that's not even the most impressive part. She activated another holographic display, this one showing complex molecular structures that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. "The hybrid consciousness interfaces have allowed us to design entirely new materials," she continued. "Crystalline organic composites that combine Kythera durability with human adaptability. We're talking about substances that can self-repair, evolve their properties based on environmental needs, and interface directly with biological systems." Zara felt Mordak's presence expanding through the research ship's systems, his ancient consciousness marveling at what the collaboration had achieved. Through their connection, she sensed his thoughts. In 30 days, these two species had made advances that individually might have taken them centuries to discover. But perhaps most significantly, Dr. Vasquez added, "We've developed methods for consciousness integration that could allow other species to join the collaboration safely. The techniques we've pioneered here could be adapted for any sufficiently complex nervous system." The full scope of what they were proposing hit the Kythera fleet like a revelation. This wasn't just about human-Kythera cooperation anymore. They were talking about the foundation for a truly multi-species galactic civilization, one where different forms of consciousness could contribute their unique perspectives to shared goals. Commander Vextar, who had opposed the demonstration from the beginning, transmitted a grudging acknowledgement. "The achievements are notable, but surely this represents the peak of what such collaboration could accomplish. Maintaining this level of innovation indefinitely would be impossible." Zara smiled, recognizing the challenge for what it was. Not genuine skepticism, but a request for proof that the partnership model could sustain long-term growth rather than just producing impressive short-term results. "Actually," she replied, "we've barely scratched the surface of what becomes possible when you combine different types of consciousness. Every breakthrough we've made has revealed 3 new questions we never would have thought to ask. The collaboration isn't running out of steam, it's accelerating." She gestured toward the holographic displays showing their research results, but also toward the mixed teams of humans and Kythera working together with an efficiency and creativity that neither species had ever achieved alone. "This is what human exponential thinking looks like when it's supported by Kythera systematic implementation. We don't just solve problems, We create entirely new categories of solutions that open up possibilities we didn't even know existed. Through the ship's communication systems, she could sense discussions erupting across the Kythera fleet as commanders and scientists grappled with the implications of what they had witnessed. 47,000 years of imperial expansion based on resource extraction was being challenged by 30 days of collaborative innovation. But the most significant change was in Mordak himself. Through their ongoing mental connection, Zara could feel the ancient dragon's isolation finally ending. For the first time in 3 million years, he was part of something larger than himself, not as a weapon to be used or a force to be feared, but as a conscious being contributing his vast knowledge and perspective to a community of minds working toward common goals. The demonstration period has concluded, Admiral Thexivor announced, his transmission reaching every ship in the fleet. The results? Exceed all projections. The partnership proposal is accepted. But even as celebration erupted among the research teams, Zara felt a new challenge approaching through Mordak's cosmic senses. Word of their unprecedented collaboration had spread beyond the local star system, reaching other galactic powers who viewed the emerging human-Kythera alliance with suspicion and fear. The real test of their new civilization was about to begin. 6 months after the first successful demonstration, the transformation had spread far beyond anyone's wildest expectations. The joint research station orbiting Earth had grown into a massive complex housing scientists and engineers from 17 different species, each bringing their unique perspectives to collaborative projects that were reshaping the fundamental understanding of physics, consciousness, and civilization itself. Zara Chen, now 16 and recognized as the youngest galactic ambassador in recorded history, moved through the station's corridors in her upgraded mobility chair, a hybrid creation that combined human ergonomics with Kythera, crystalline technology, and incorporated biotechnical enhancements from 3 other species. But more importantly, she carried within her mind the accumulated wisdom of dozens of different forms of consciousness, all connected through the hybrid interface networks that had evolved from those first experimental sessions. The challenges had come exactly as predicted. The hegemony of Saxtor, a rigid military alliance that controlled 12 star systems through fear and superior firepower, had declared the human-Kythera partnership a threat to galactic stability. The collective of pure thought, a species of energy beings who considered biological consciousness inferior, had attempted to disrupt the research station with psychic attacks. Even some progressive Kythera admirals had questioned whether the collaboration was growing too quickly, becoming too dependent on alien thinking patterns, but every challenge had only strengthened the alliance and revealed new possibilities for growth. The Saxtor battle fleets are moving into the outer system, Admiral Zeknara reported during the morning briefing, her harmonic clicks now interspersed with human vocal patterns, a linguistic evolution that had emerged naturally from months of close collaboration. They demand we cease all research activities and submit to traditional conquest protocols. Zara studied the tactical displays showing the approaching warships, but she felt no fear. Through her connection to Mordak, she could sense the ancient dragon's amusement at the Saxtor's conventional approach to problem-solving. "How many ships?" she asked. 300 heavy cruisers, 800 support vessels, approximately 50,000 troops, replied Captain Rodriguez, the human military liaison who had adapted to multi-species warfare tactics with surprising ease. "It's the largest battle fleet the Saxtor have ever assembled. And they're expecting us to either surrender or fight them using traditional methods," Zara mused. "They have no idea what they're actually walking into, do they?" Dr. Elena Vasquez, now the station's director of consciousness research, smiled with the expression of someone who had spent months watching impossible things become routine. "Should we show them the new defensive systems?" "Better," Zara decided. "Let's show them what galactic civilization looks like when it's based on inclusion rather than domination." The response to the Saxtor threat wasn't military in any conventional sense. Instead, the research station activated its most ambitious project yet, a network of consciousness-bridging transmissions that reached out to every ship in the approaching fleet, offering direct mental contact with the collaborative alliance. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Saxtor warriors who had trained their entire lives for conquest suddenly found their minds touched by perspectives they had never imagined. Kythera efficiency merged with human creativity, enhanced by the mathematical precision of the Veltari species and the empathetic understanding of the plant-based Groven collective. For beings who had known only hierarchy and conflict, the experience of true cooperative consciousness was literally life-changing. Within 6 hours, half the Saxtor fleet had requested permission to join the research station as observers. Within 12 hours, their military commanders were engaged in heated debates about whether conquest-based civilization could possibly compete with collaboration-based alternatives. Within 24 hours, the invasion had become the largest voluntary integration event in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Caxtor himself, the most feared military mind in Saxtor space, transmitted a personal message to the station that would be remembered for millennia. We came here to destroy what we saw as a threat to galactic order. Instead, we have discovered that galactic order itself needs to evolve. Request permission to establish permanent diplomatic relations. But the most profound changes were happening on Earth itself. The planet had become a pilgrimage destination for species across the galaxy who wanted to understand how humans had achieved something that had been considered impossible. The creation of a truly inclusive civilization that grew stronger. With each new member, rather than becoming diluted, the small farming town of Millbrook, where Zara's journey had begun, now hosted the galaxy's first multi-species university, where young beings from hundreds of different worlds came to study collaborative consciousness and innovative problem-solving. The hospital where Zara had spent months recovering from her accident had become a research center for adaptive technology, developing solutions that turned perceived limitations into unique strengths. But the most significant change was in Mordak himself. The ancient dragon who had spent 3 million years in cosmic isolation had become the cornerstone of a new kind of civilization, not as a feared judge or weapon of mass destruction, but as a wise elder whose vast experience and perspective helped guide the growing alliance through challenges that no single species could have handled alone. I have a confession, Mordak said to Zara during one of their private mental conversations, as they watched a new group of young beings from 12 different species work together on a project to develop sustainable ecosystems for marginal worlds. For all my eons of existence, I never truly understood what civilization could mean until I observed what you humans call friendship. Zara felt tears welling in her eyes as she sensed the depth of emotion behind his words. Through their connection, she could feel the cosmic entity's wonder at discovering that consciousness wasn't meant to be solitary, that intelligence grew stronger when it was shared, that even beings as different as dragons and disabled human girls could find common ground in their desire to connect and create. The galaxy is changing, she replied, in ways we never could have imagined. Indeed, Mordak agreed. And this is only the beginning. The principles we have discovered here, collaborative consciousness, adaptive strength, inclusive growth, these concepts will spread to every corner of galactic civilization. The age of conquest is ending. The age of creation has begun. As Zara looked out through the research station's observation ports at the incredible diversity of ships representing hundreds of different species, all working together toward common goals, she reflected on how far they had all come. 6 months ago, she had been a broken girl in a wheelchair, watching alien invaders descend on her small town. Now she was helping to architect a new form of civilization that transformed perceived weaknesses into collaborative strengths. The Kythera had learned that true power came not from domination, but from the exponential growth that occurred when different minds worked together. Mordak had discovered that eons of loneliness could end in the space of a heartbeat when the right connections were made, and humanity had proven that their greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their weapons, but in their ability to see potential for friendship and cooperation in the most unlikely circumstances. The girl they had thrown to their deadliest dragon, thinking it would provide quick entertainment before the real conquest began, had instead become the bridge that connected their cosmic loneliness to the warmth of genuine community, and in doing so, she had shown the entire galaxy what became possible when beings chose to build bridges instead of walls. The age of isolated civilizations competing for limited resources was ending. The age of collaborative consciousness exploring infinite possibilities had begun, and at the center of it all, A 16-year-old girl in a wheelchair continued to prove that humanity's greatest power lay not in what they could accomplish alone, but in what they could inspire others to accomplish together.